Nashville Public Radio serves Middle Tennessee in many ways every day, including through this podcast. You can support it by leaving a review or rating, by telling a friend about it, or by contributing at WPLN.org/give.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's June 18th, 2025. On this day in 1958, Davidson County voters rejected a proposal to merge the county government with the city of Nashville. It took some real maneuvering over the next couple of years to change public opinion on the matter and establish what we now know as Metro. And one of the key aspects of the second successful metropolitan proposal may have to go away soon. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. One of the things that seems to confuse transplants when they first move to Middle Tennessee is the way we use the word metro around here. It's not a subway system like the metros in D.C. or Paris. It's not shorthand for the greater Nashville area with all of its suburbs. It's the way we refer to the local government that runs most things inside the boundary of Nashville and Davidson County. And to further confuse things, Nashville is Davidson County and Davidson County is Nashville. They aren't separate. There isn't really a city as far as government is concerned, and there isn't really a county. There's just Metro. But it wasn't always this way. For almost 200 years, the city and county were separate. And over those centuries, a number of smaller towns sprung up in the county. Towns that were absolutely not Nashville. Farming communities that didn't particularly identify with Nashville, except that it was their neighbor. Places that we now think of as neighborhood names, like Antioch, Bellevue, Madison, Hermitage, Whites Creek. A lot of things were different then. Much of Davidson was rural. The county was mostly run by a judge and a group of court magistrates, known then as squires. There were also some boards and commissions to run more specific functions of the county government, but for the most part, it was a system set up to govern in only the broadest of strokes. A lot of the people who lived outside of Nashville city limits felt little need for more government than that. But some of the suburbs were having a little more trouble, especially on the infrastructure front. Our rocky soil isn't always so great for septic systems, and a lot of people in the suburbs were eager to hook up to Nashville's sewer lines. Some of them really wanted the fire and police protection they saw in the city. And they didn't necessarily love the way that everyone outside Nashville's limits had to pay extra fees in order to buy power from the city-owned Nashville Electric Service. Meanwhile, people in the city felt like they bore a lot of the burden of services that were used by folks who worked in the city limits, who shopped and sought out entertainment in Nashville, but who lived out in the county. In 1946, a group started holding meetings to brainstorm a new way of doing things. It's interesting to me that they weren't the politicians. They were prominent citizens, but not office holders. And they basically determined that the way forward was to make more of Davidson County part of Nashville. At first, that meant annexing smaller communities into the city. But the mayor at the time wasn't really hot on that idea, so it never happened. But then the state passed a law allowing governments to consolidate. And from that, the idea of Metro was born. Consolidating the city and county would solve a lot of problems. County Judge Beverly Briley endorsed the idea, and so did the city's mayor, Ben West. And in late 1956, a concrete plan was made public. Its proponents got the state legislature to sign off, and work on drafting a Metro charter got underway. Now, at this point, a worry started to bubble up in the Black community. They had a much stronger presence in city government than in the counties. Through a lot of concerted effort over the years, they'd managed to elect 2 Black members to Nashville City Council. Now remember, this is before the Civil Rights Movement, before desegregation. Getting that representation in the city government had taken a lot of work. Would consolidation mean starting over from square one? Separately, people in a few of the newest suburbs, most of which were also the wealthiest, really didn't want to be lumped in with Nashville. Belmead, Forest Hills, Oak Hill had only recently been carved out as exclusive communities for rich folks who wanted to leave Nashville behind. Why should they reverse course? The charter proposal that went in front of voters in 1958 tried to solve that last problem by letting the wealthy suburbs retain some independence. It tried to address the concerns of rural county residents by establishing separate urban and general services districts with different tax rates. But they didn't really convince those groups. and they didn't really do much to address the concerns of black voters at all. The referendum failed. The city started coming up with ways of taking things into its own hands, like starting to annex new land and implementing a wheel tax that applied not just to residents, but to everyone who worked in Nashville. Tensions arose, and very quickly, consolidation again was suggested as a more orderly way forward. So work resumed on a potential metropolitan charter. And this time it worked. 6 incorporated suburbs would be able to keep their charters and handle certain functions within their boundaries. The idea of general and urban services was better honed. But what really changed, and this was definitely a major factor that led to passage of that second referendum in 1962, was the structure of the proposed Metro Council. The first proposal had called for a legislative body with 21 members, but the one that passed carved the county into smaller districts, better ensuring that disparate constituencies and small communities would each be able to have a council member who really represented them, rather than having their needs averaged out with other groups in a much larger district. That was especially important for ensuring that the black community continued to have the level of representation in a metro government that they had achieved on Nashville's city council. Now, 40 members is a big council, but that's what it took to make Metro happen. Now, it looks like Metro may be forced to change to essentially the kind of council that the first failed referendum suggested back in 1958. This isn't the first time that change has been suggested. Mayor Bill Purcell recommended shrinking the council back in 2003. Councilmember Emily Evans wanted to reduce it in 2014. There were also referendums on that kind of idea in 96 and 98. The argument each time was that a smaller council could be more efficient. But again and again, the city has decided one way or another that 40 members is the right size for a metro council that offers adequate representation to the many sub-communities who make up Davidson County. But the state legislature disagrees. 2 years ago, the General Assembly passed a law limiting the size of councils in consolidated metropolitan governments to 20 members. Of course, Nashville-Davidson County is the only metro that exceeds the limit. Metro sued, claiming it was being illegally singled out in a way that violates Tennessee's home rule law. A trial judge ruled in Metro's favor. But earlier this month, the state appeals court reversed that ruling. It said the other 2 smaller metropolitan governments in the state would be limited from expanding their council in the future, so the argument that the law targets Nashville didn't fly. And that's where things stand now. That ruling was handed down a couple of weeks ago. Metro officials said at the time that they were weighing their options, so it's possible they could ask the state Supreme Court to reconsider. If the ruling stands, the change will be felt in 2027, when Metro Council seats are next up for re-election. In just a few minutes, this week's edition of What Where Wednesday is coming up after the newscast.
Tennessee's legislature has passed a record-breaking number of anti-LGBTQ laws. I'm Miriam Yao, and as WPLN's Power and Equity reporter, I focus not only on how marginalized communities contend with those new laws, but how they come together in spite of them.
I think what gives me hope is that someone like you is covering this. Because if the overwhelming narrative is one of defeat, how can we have hope?
Listen here on 90.3 WPLN News.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. The majority of Americans say their financial situation hasn't changed since Trump took office. That's according to a new Vanderbilt poll released today, which tracks how Americans are feeling about Trump's economic and immigration policies. WPLN's Miriam Yao reports that more people are concerned with how deportations are being carried out than are worried about the current economy.
The majority of Americans still support deporting people who don't have legal status, but that support drops to roughly a third when the person being deported doesn't get a formal hearing in immigration court, according to the Vanderbilt Unity poll. Trump's crackdown on immigration has led to wrongful deportations, in which courts have ordered the president to reverse course. An overwhelming 83% of respondents say Trump should follow those rulings, even if they generally support the deportations. As for the economy, most Americans feel good about their finances right now, but a strong majority fear that Trump's tariffs will hurt their bottom line in the future. Miriam Yao, WPLN News.
Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell has submitted documents to Congress after a committee requested investigative materials about the city's preparation for immigration enforcement activities. It's part of a federal effort to conduct oversight of state and local governments who, quote, thwart the work of federal immigration officials. The request came after U.S. Representative Andy Ogles called for an investigation into O'Connell's update to an executive order by President Trump. That update required city departments to inform the mayor's office after communicating with immigration authorities. The committee requested all documents and communications related to the executive order, ICE enforcement actions, and the arrests of undocumented people in Nashville. Metro submitted nearly 200 pages of related documents late last week. Documents don't appear to demonstrate efforts to obstruct ICE. Much of the submission consists of emails across Metro departments to determine who would be responsible for reporting communications with immigration authorities. Nashville has notched another court win against the Trump administration. A federal judge temporarily blocked cuts that impact public health programs. Nashville joined the suit with other Democratic-led cities, arguing that it was unconstitutional to claw back $11 billion approved by Congress for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The sudden cuts caused layoffs in Nashville and canceled measles vaccine clinics, as well as disrupting services for the homeless community and lab testing. Nashville's Metro Council has approved the city's spending plan for the year. The $3.8 billion budget marks a roughly 15% increase over last year's. That's tied in part to a property tax rate that will result in higher bills for many Nashvillians. The approved plan is an altered version of what the mayor proposed. Led by Budget Chair Delicia Porterfield, the plan left the cost and tax rate of the mayor's proposal untouched, but increased funds for Metro employee pay and various programs.
After very extensively searching through the budget line by line, this is what we were able to come up with to do the most amount of good for our residents and to provide excellent services for our residents at the lowest tax burden possible.
Support was not unanimous. A number of council members pushed back on the spending and tax burden. That includes Councilmember Courtney Johnston, who briefly pursued her own proposal.
To the taxpayers out there, I'm sorry that there's just no appetite in this chamber for reducing spending, and that's the only way to reduce your tax burden. I know the substitute that offers a 28% reduction to the proposed tax increase doesn't have the support of this body, so I'll spare everyone the drama and the time of the debate.
Porterfield's budget will go into effect July 1st. Tuition will rise for students this fall at Middle Tennessee State University. The Board of Trustees approved an increase just shy of 6.5% yesterday. There are also increases to fees related to athletics, parking, and other parts of campus life. MTSU's leadership also approved employee pay raises of nearly 2%. Meanwhile, Tennessee State University has reached an agreement with the state to reallocate $96 million to support its operational needs. The money is to be used over the next 3 years. The funding is a portion of the $250 million that the state already allocated to TSU to make infrastructure upgrades and other improvements. TSU officials say the agreement helps ensure the university's financial stability. State officials noted that an investment in education is an investment in Tennessee's future. They stressed their commitment to TSU, highlighting the university's agricultural innovation and noting recent improvements. TSU's recently appointed Board of Trustees has been working with state agencies to strengthen its financial oversight and compliance. Belmont's campus is abuzz this week, with dozens of local high schoolers getting a taste of college life in a summer program. From sharing a dorm room to eating in the dining hall, they'll learn to live and study independently. WPLN's Camelia Burris visited.
Moving away for college can be scary, especially if you're still in high school.
Being in a completely new situation in like this college area was daunting.
That's Chris Vestal, a 17-year-old rising senior at Maplewood High School. Kids in the program commit to 2 summers, and Vestal is in his 2nd year. He says he loves that he can build on what he's already learned.
Last year in this program, we learned a lot about how to find credible sources and a few basic coding things that we're just expanding on this year.
The program is a partnership with Nashville Public Schools that recruits kids from 12 high schools known as the Academies of Nashville. Program Director Joseph Luckey says many of the kids will be first-generation college students.
We're really targeting students that have high potential but may not have the access to the opportunities.
One of the goals of the program is for Belmont to reflect the diversity of Nashville. This, Lukey says, is done by exposing kids to people from different backgrounds.
Bringing them all together to have this experience is teaching them on how to create networks and relationships with people that don't necessarily, they come from the same schools as them.
While some kids end up attending Belmont, Lukey stresses that the goal is to just prepare the students to succeed at any college they choose. Camelia Burris, WPLN News.
Some state officials are accusing Memphis leaders of destroying documents pertaining to a school district audit. Tennessee's General Assembly voted earlier this year to fund a $6 million forensic audit of Memphis Shelby County schools. GOP lawmakers have suggested there is financial mismanagement in the district that rises to a criminal level. Democrats pushed back, but were more focused on defeating another bill that would have allowed the state to take control of the school system. That measure did not pass. Now the Tennessee Lookout reports a statement from both the House and Senate speakers makes vague allegations that documents are being destroyed ahead of that audit. Memphis leaders suggest there's no evidence of tampering and say the school district is fully cooperating with the review. The NAACP and an environmental group say they intend to sue Elon Musk's artificial intelligence company xAI over concerns about air pollution it has generated in Memphis. Yesterday, the groups accused xAI of pushing ahead to operate gas turbines in violation of the Clean Air Act. Its data center, which is powered in part by pollution-emitting gas turbines, began operating last year without first applying for a permit. The turbines have released air pollution near predominantly black communities. Musk's xAI says it's boosting the city's economy by investing billions of dollars in the data center, paying millions in local taxes, and creating hundreds of jobs. Opponents say the supercomputing center is stressing the power grid. They contend the turbines emit smog and carbon dioxide, pollutants that cause lung irritation. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. Tomorrow is Juneteenth. As a reminder, we won't have an episode of this podcast since it's a station holiday. And if you get the day off too, how about a little celebration?
I'm Marquise Munson here with another edition of Nashville Public Radio's What Where Wednesday, keeping you up to date with the happenings in Nashville this week. You can take in several live music opportunities tomorrow night with Smino and Samara Sen at the Pinnacle, the Bug Club at Dark Matter, and WNXP presents Being Dead at Cannery Hall's Row 1 stage. On Friday night at Cannery Hall, Esther Rose, Andrew Combs, and Aaron Ray perform, and Flory is at Dark Matter. Our list wraps up at the start of next week on Monday with WNXP presents The Antlers and Ockerville River at the Basement East. For more events, head over to WNXP.org/events. Tomorrow is Juneteenth, with programming happening throughout Middle Tennessee, including Juneteenth Kickback at Brooklyn Bowl, Community Day at the National Museum of African American Music, and the annual celebration at Fort Negley. This week for What Were Wednesday, we discuss Juneteenth programming at the Tennessee State Museum. Stephanie Davis, communications assistant at the museum, tells us about the importance of Black history in Tennessee.
As you walk through our galleries, you'll see how African Americans contribute to early development of Tennessee. Like there's Abraham Bledsoe, early log hunter, enslaved people who contributed to Tennessee's agricultural economy. And then as you get to the Civil War and Reconstruction, you'll see how African American troops participated in the Civil War. And then as you progress, you'll see how after the war, African Americans developed communities and flourished in their own neighborhoods and towns, and how they rebuilt after coming out of enslavement, and then moving through as Tennessee transforms the achievements of African Americans as entertainers, as journalists, as activists, and so on. So all throughout the gallery, you'll get knowledge of prominent Tennesseans that have contributed to Tennessee as a state, early state, and beyond. The Juneteenth event is an annually we can celebrate the achievements of African Americans in Tennessee and kind of continue the tradition of celebrating the resilience of the community and also looking back on the push for equality, but also taking that history of Emancipation Day celebrations and highlighting the achievements of African Americans through dance, food, music, crafts. Hands-on history is something that we'll do, which will allow visitors to interact with museum educators upstairs in our galleries and highlight some of the artifacts that kind of highlight African American history. We'll have a talk by our curator of social history, Trinae Chapman. The topic will be shifting focus, antebellum and Civil War photography in Tennessee, and that'll highlight some of the political and social changes that occurred before, during, and after the Civil War. And she will highlight some of the stories featured in that upcoming gallery, which is opening June 10th. We'll have an entertainment hour, which will be lots of fun because we'll feature the Sankofa African Drum and Dance Company. And so we'll have them here with desserts and music and probably a participatory element to that. So that'll be lots of fun. And then we'll also have African American highlight tours throughout the day. That'll go from 10 to 3, our Juneteenth celebration. And hopefully people will, come early and enjoy all the festivities and afterwards head on over to Fort Negley for fireworks and more activities. We're just gonna send folks over there after they come to our Juneteenth celebration and hope they continue the festivities there because that's the ultimate way to close out the Juneteenth celebration, of course.
For more information about Juneteenth programming at the Tennessee State Museum and other events happening this week, visit WNXP.org. My name is Marquise Munson, and thank you for listening to another edition of What Were Wednesday. I'm a rolling stone, put you under the burner, rolling stone.
We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday, so subscribe in your favorite podcasting app to make sure you never miss an episode. And if you like this, you'll probably enjoy the Nashvillager newsletter, too. You'll get perspective from more of my colleagues at Nashville Public Radio and links to the stories we're following. Sign up for those daily emails at WPLN.org/Nashvillager. Thanks so much for listening. We're taking the day off tomorrow for Juneteenth. Let's make these 2 days good ones, and we'll catch back up on Friday.